This is chapters 76 through 80 of 14 Ways to Die. 76. It turns out Mr. Humphreys hasn't been suspended, but the next day everyone who went on the trip has to meet in an empty classroom, and he's there with Mrs. Bradley. I'm relieved because he didn't do anything wrong. We did. We had the party, Maya brought the alcohol, and Bernie grabbed a whole bottle before she left. Mr. Humphreys had nothing to do with it. I should be in English this morning, but Mr. Collins is away at an educator conference. What happened last week is regretful, and we should all be thankful that Bernadette is okay, Mrs. Bradley says. You can hear the collective sigh of relief, and a few of us start mumbling until the principal says, "That's not to say it is the end of the matter. Who brought the alcohol to Mayfield Lodge?" We all keep our eyes focused straight ahead, staring at something that won't stare back. But I can still feel both teachers' eyes burning into my face, my back hot and sticky, the collective guilt of the room weighing heavily on us all. One person in here is guiltier than most. I just need to figure out who that is. There are only 12 people in our theology class, and with Bernie gone, that leaves me to watch the 4 boys, Eloise, Pav, Allie, Jennifer, and Maya. We will be conducting a thorough investigation, Mrs. Bradley says. This is not acceptable behavior. You brought the school into disrepute and put a student's life at risk. We sit in silence, desperate for this to be over. I expect to know the full details of that night by the end of today, she says, turning to Mr. Humphreys, who steps forward and clears his throat. I've never seen him nervous before, but he can hardly get his words out. If anyone needs to talk, the school counselor will be in all week, he says, and my door is always open. He pauses for a moment, then catches the principal's eye and says, "Needless to say, I feel let down by all of you. I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening today, 24 hours after we came back to school, a day when they don't have a camera in their faces. Mrs. Bradley doesn't want this conversation online. I don't stand up when they tell us we can go. I hold Emily's hand, silently telling her to stay with me, while the rest of the class leaves. I watch them one by one, looking for the slightest clue, because one of them must have left the article, and if they did, what does that mean if I finally have the magpie man's attention? When it's just me and Emily, she turns and says, "What is it?" I take the newspaper clipping out of my bag and show her. That was in my suitcase when I came home from Mayfield Lodge. Emily looks confused and her eyes go wide and she says, "So it was one of them?" It must have been. The first time it happened at school, so it couldn't have been anyone who worked at the retreat. There was no lock on our bedroom door, Emily says. That's fucking creepy. I hadn't thought of that. Anyone could have snuck in at any time. What are we going to do? Emily asks, and I like that she says, we. Most days I feel alone, even when I'm surrounded by people, and that has only increased since coming home. I think back to Mayfield, to the suitcase I left open by my bed, to the door I only blocked on the first night, because by the second I trusted everyone. But that's a mistake, trusting people before they have earned it. 77. I watch my bag constantly, looking for hands that get too close, for someone giving themselves away. I unzip my bag and let it hang loose at my sides, my phone inside, pointing up, recording the ceiling. I wander the hallways, looking in the opposite direction, hoping someone makes their move and I catch their face on camera. But when I check, all I have is an empty bag and a rustled recording. At lunch, I sit with Emily and Hannah, watching people walk through the cafeteria while they talk over me. I totally did not see it coming, Emily says. I was watching, thinking, what the fuck are you doing? And then you whip the towel off and bam, hair dye twist. I smile but don't reply because I have too much to think about. My head cam caught the perfume comment, but no one is talking about it because they don't know it's important. They were too busy looking at my face and my hair to worry about a couple of random words. At least my friends are taking the news clipping seriously. If it was someone who went to Mayfield, we have 10 suspects, Hannah says. But Emily shakes her head. It's not Jennifer or Allie or Pav or... You can't rule people out because you suddenly like them, Hannah says. She still hasn't forgiven us for making new friends. She stares at her hands and mumbles, I wish I'd been there. And there it is, the real reason she's angry. Emily laughs and pulls her into a hug. We wish you'd been there too. But if one of my theology classmates is doing this, what happened at Mayfield is a lie. We're not friends. I'm part of some sick game and they're happy to make me suffer. 78. 10 classmates, 10 lockers. The challenge is to break into all of them. Except it might not be much of a challenge because when we were given our locker combinations, they weren't impossible to remember sequences. They were our birthdays, just the month and the day. We could have changed them if we wanted to, but most of us didn't bother. Half an hour on Facebook gives me everything I need, and when school ends, I wait in the computer lab watching the lazy teachers leave early and the good ones stay until it's dark. Twice the custodian tries to kick me out, and twice I say something about last-minute studying. And now I'm standing by Jennifer's locker, setting the code to 1217 and feeling it click open. Whoever is leaving the articles must be keeping them somewhere, so why not here? Jennifer's locker is full of crap. Old books the librarian has probably forgotten about, and gym clothes at least 3 years old but no newspaper clippings. I hear a noise behind me and freeze. A door slams down the hallway and someone shouts a goodbye, then silence. It's weird being in an empty school. The hallways are usually jammed, the volume on maximum, but tonight it feels like a cemetery. I don't want to be here longer than I have to, so I move to Pav's locker, check my phone for her birthday, and then search. Yinka's stinks of muddy soccer cleats. Maya's is covered in family photos, but one after another I see nothing but normal. Before I go, I look at the graduates' display, the faces of last year's seniors staring back at me. They are scattered across the country now. I've walked past this display lots of times, but tonight, in the quiet, their smiles look sinister, as if they know something I don't. Footsteps echo down the hallway, and I hold my breath. They're louder than before. They aren't going home. They're coming toward me. I push my back against the lockers, but there's nowhere to hide. I move one step forward, then another, desperate not to make a sound. Being caught here after dark isn't something I want to explain, but they're faster than I am. They're racing around the corner while I shuffle. I move back to the closest locker, Eloise's, unlock my phone, and search for her birthday in my notes. "Who's that?" someone says behind me, and when I turn, Mr. Collins is standing there. "Hi, sir," I say, swallowing the panic in my throat. "Why are you here so late?" "I forgot something," I say, gesturing to the locker. When he doesn't move, I quickly glance at my phone, then enter the code and feel a wave of relief when it opens. Staring into Eloise's locker, I say, "Well, have a good night." Mr. Collins tilts his head, but I push the door so he can't see the photo of Eloise and Bernie, or the textbooks for the classes I don't take. "You shouldn't be here," he says. "You could get locked in." "It won't happen again," I say. I close the locker without taking anything and hope he doesn't notice, but the way he looks at me, I'm not so sure. When I get home, Dad gasps, and I stare at my head, and I touch my hair and say, "Sorry, I'm trying something new." I left before he was up this morning, and I guess he hasn't watched yesterday's highlights yet, because he walks slowly toward me and whispers, "You look just like her." "Is that okay? I can change it." Dad shakes his head but doesn't reply, and I feel guilty for reminding him of Mom, even though her face is all over the house. When Nan sees me, she makes a strange noise, then pulls me into a hug, and all evening I catch both of them sneaking glances at me. A few times they look at each other, and something silent passes between them, and before Nan leaves, she hugs me extra tight and says, "I love you, darling." She would be so proud. 79. 5 of us go to the hospital. Me, Emily, Jennifer, Pav, and Allie. Eloise has been going on her own, handing out tiny pieces of information as if Bernie's incident is too precious to share. I think she resents us because before Mayfield, it was just the two of them, and maybe it would have gone back to that if things had been different. I flash back to the moment I saw Bernie's body on the bed, how scared I was, how I forgot my own problems because suddenly they weren't the biggest in the room. Mayfield was supposed to change us, but not like this. We were supposed to come back smiling, but when I think of it, I see the bigger picture, how everyone is cracked and only the luckiest hold themselves together. When we arrive, the nurse shakes her head and says, 2 at a time. "How about 3? Emily asks. The nurse huffs and says, 2 at a time. Emily makes a face behind her back, and Pav laughs and says, "How are we going to do this?" "You and Emily go first," I say, "then Allie and Jennifer. I'll go on my own." Emily looks confused and is about to argue when I say, "I found her. I'd like to talk to her alone." Before Mayfield, she would never have agreed to go with Pav, but Emily nods and says, "Okay." When they are gone, Allie and Jennifer make small talk while they watch the nurses moving from room to room. I imagine what would have happened if Mom had made it to the hospital, if someone had found her alive, and she'd been rushed in while doctors spoke in frantic codes like on TV. But there was nothing to resuscitate, nothing to help, only a body to pick apart for clues that weren't there. I wonder why I think these things, but do I have a choice, or is it who I am? Am I destined to think bad thoughts for the rest of my life? Emily touches my shoulder, shaking me out of my daydream before I even notice she's back. You okay? She says. I nod, watching as Allie and Jennifer go in. I'm not sure if I want to go by myself anymore. I'm scared Bernie will say she only got drunk to forget what I told her, that her sadness was worthless compared to mine. But it's either that or I leave without saying anything, and that feels worse. How is she? I ask Emily. Okay, I think. I expected her to be at death's door, to be honest. I don't reply. I stare down the hallway and see Bernie's parents walking toward me. Her mom is short and slim. She used to jog past our window every evening, and I remember watching her stretch in her front yard and wondering why she bothered. She's smiling, and when she gets closer, she says, Jessica, I'm glad you came. I stand up and let her hug me, then wait for her to fill the silence. Have you seen her yet? She asks. I shake my head. It's 2 at a time. Bernie's stepdad grins and says, Don't listen to them. We're always sneaking in extras. He has a beard now, thicker than the hair on his head, and I feel awkward for not knowing him better. I nod, and when I don't reply, he says, We heard you were the one who found her. I nod again because I know what's coming, and I don't want it. Thank you, he says, for everything you've done. I feel guilty because I didn't do anything good. I told her she was pathetic for missing her dad. I flicked a switch she couldn't flick back, and when I found her, all I could do was scream. Reg helped her, and Andrea and the paramedics. I just watched it happen. You're welcome, I say, because it's better than the silence, and Bernie's mom touches my shoulder and gives me that look, the one that says she feels sorry for me, even though it's her daughter in the hospital. When Allie and Jennifer come out, everyone looks at me and I start to blush, swallowing the sickness as I reluctantly walk back into the room. And there she is, sitting straight up and surrounded by presents. I wish I'd thought of that, but it's just another thing to feel guilty for. I sit in the plastic seat next to Bernie's bed and say, Hi. Hey. I'm beginning to think leaving was the better option. How are you? I'm all right, she says, although her eyes tell a different story. It's nice to see you. I hope that's true, even after what I said on our spirit walk. Was it my fault? When Bernie asks what I mean, I say, We argued. You swore at me. She shakes her head but doesn't reply. I thought you were happy, I say. Not really, Bernie whispers. She fills every silence with a sigh, her eyes digging deep into my own, looking for something that scares me. I thought you were dead, I say at last, and she nods, as if she expected to be, as if she wanted to be. I'm so sorry, Jess. I didn't mean to scare you. I wanted it to end. Wanted what to end? This. When your mom has been ripped out of your life with no explanation, when your tiny broken family is all you have left, it's hard to have sympathy for people who give up. But the way Bernie looks, I can't help feeling sorry for her. I touch her hand and she squeezes it. I sit in silence waiting for her to talk because honestly, what could I possibly say to make her feel better? That place, she says, it was so amazing and everyone was so happy, and you know what I felt? Nothing. Just empty. She looks pale and worn down by whatever invisible issues are eating away at her. I understand what she meant now when she said she wished every day could be like it was at Mayfield. She takes a deep breath and says, They keep asking why I did it. Why did you? I couldn't stop myself. I can't remember the last time I was happy. I want to say it will be okay, but I hate it when people tell me that. It's lazy and it's wrong. We lie to sad people because we think it will make them feel better, but sad people see through lies. You can only trick happy people with bullshit. They keep telling me things will get better, Bernie says. They keep talking about the future, but when I think about it, all I see is nothing. Miles and miles of nothing. I'm not used to being the shoulder to cry on. I guess even now, 10 years after Mom died, people don't burden me with their problems just in case. But Bernie doesn't care about hurting my feelings or adding to my worry pile, and in a weird way, I'm grateful for that. I didn't want to go home, she says. I fucking hate it there. So I got drunk, and then I kept drinking, and when I finished the bottle, I went to sleep, and now I'm here. I'm sorry, I whisper. What for? For not being your friend anymore. Bernie smiles and says, We could change that. I smile and sit with her, stroking her hand and listening to her talk, hoping it makes a difference. 80. A body has been found in a park in London, and police are appealing for witnesses. If you've been through this yourself, you know the details are sketchy because the detectives are holding things back. When the police first want the public's help, they keep it vague. They say where the crime happened and roughly what time. They say whether the victim was a man or a woman. The real clues come out later, when no one has come forward and the investigation stalls. Serial killers are not serial killers until they start collecting bodies. It's their habits that give them their names. The Magpie Man was no one when he killed my mom, but now he's a monster you warn kids about. He last killed in September, so if the usual 9-month gap is intentional, he has struck 2 months early. I think it's him. Don't ask me how. I can feel it. I go online and try to find more information, but everywhere is saying the same thing. I don't know how this woman died. I don't know if it's a clue or a coincidence. When they found my mother, the bottom of her mouth was swollen black, her tongue crushed between her teeth, her hyoid bone and windpipe and larynx all broken. When your mom was strangled to death, you eventually look up the specifics and wish you hadn't. In the nightmares I had when I finally realized she was gone, I could see fine crescent echoes of fingernails on her smudged and caved-in neck. But the truth is there are no fingernail marks because the Magpie Man was careful not to leave DNA, only fabric from the kind of cheap black gloves you can buy at any store. After he strangled her, he carved the number 1 into her chest. Then he went home. He has done it 12 more times since then. What if the thing the newspaper isn't telling us, that the police aren't revealing, is that the monster has killed again?